Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Jelinek. I'm the co-chair for the SQL Pass virtual chapter focused on master data services and data quality services. Joining us today is Julie Smith, BI consultant with Innovative Architects, who's going to be presenting data quality services. Just to let you guys know, I did watch this with her last night, and it's going to be a great presentation. Julie, I'm going to turn control over to you.
Okay.
And it's all yours.
All right. Okay, hi, welcome everyone. Welcome to Data Quality Services. My name is Julie Smith, and like Mark said, I'm a consultant at Innovative Architects. I also was recently awarded with the SQL Server MVP, which is really exciting. I blog at datachicks.com with Audrey Hammonds, another SQL Server MVP. And that's our address right there, datachicks.com. Twitter, I'm Julie Chicks, and Audrey's Data Audrey. So I'm contributing. Yes, Mark?
You need to share your screen.
I thought I had. Sorry. Sharing failed to connect due to network issues. Try again. Okay. How about now?
I'm going to stop recording for just 1 second.
Sure. So you just want me to, maybe you click along and I'll kind of go over the slide deck?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right.
So I'm on slide number 2, Julie Smith, MVP.
Yeah, so Audrey and I were contributing authors on this book, and I'm going to advance the slide now. Next slide should say training day, does it, Mark?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so I want to invite anyone who's able to travel to Atlanta, if you're in the Atlanta area, on Pi Day, which is March 14th, and that's a very geeky day, so this is very appropriate, to come to a training day with Audrey and I. We're going to be doing a day of data warehousing, and this is something that I've wanted to do with Audrey for a long time. I said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we took a transactional model at the beginning of a day and you turned it into a dimensional model. Took a few hours to do that, and then I took that dimensional model and took the transaction data and loaded it with SSIS, and we could cover beginning dimensional modeling, we could cover beginning ETL and SSIS, and so we are going to do this on Pi Day, and that address right there will get you there, and you can find out all you need to know about it. And we're charging a nominal fee, about same thing that a SQL Saturday pre-con costs. However, Audrey and I aren't going to take any of the money. It's all going to go to the Cloverleaf School of Atlanta, where I'm a board member. And Cloverleaf School of Atlanta is an elementary school that educates children with high-functioning autism, ADHD, other learning differences. So I'm real excited about that. Check that out. Thanks. And I'm going to advance the slide, Mark.
Okay, you're actually in control now.
I am.
Yes.
My network connection came back. Wonderful. All right. So I can't see your faces or your hands, but I just want to ask you guys if you have dirty data. All right? Now the answer is either yes or you're a liar. Okay? Everybody has dirty data. Everyone. And it's a really big problem. The more data we get, the more dirty data we get. There is a very famous quote right now. It's been in a lot of the slide decks on data quality from Information Week reports in July of 2011 that states basically poor data quality is the biggest obstacle to implementing a successful BI solution. Now, it doesn't stop people from implementing a BI solution, but what often happens is that after a year's worth of work or millions of dollars or however many hundreds of thousands of dollars, when the reports start coming out, they're not usable because there are data issues. Another fact that I looked up, because I was trying to communicate what this costs you. Now, when we look at some of the examples, I think you'll understand what this, how this could cost. But IT News for Australian Business, which is a website, they stated that 15 to 20% of operating costs of an organization could be saved by implementing better data quality. And that makes sense, I think, when you start thinking about the human hours that are basically devoted to cleaning up dirty data. So we know it's a big problem, and I want to know, why is it so common? And the reason is that data, like life, is messy. And this is just a little joke, but it's kind of how I feel. I mean, there's just, You can try and put as many standards and training and process as you want, and to a large extent that will help, but at the end of the day, there's always going to be poor data, and so we have to deal with it. For instance, there's a lot of data that is created by data workers, and this slide does not mean to disparage golden retrievers. There are a lot of golden retrievers who are really good at their data entry jobs and try very hard. But if a data creator is incented by how quickly they can enter the data, which is often the case. If you're in a call center and you are supposed to be taking as many calls as you want, let's say you can't find the right location, you can't find the right product using your lookup in your application. What are you going to do? You're going to overwrite and just get your job done as quickly as possible so that you can get your bonus and your raise. And that makes perfect sense. So that's an issue with bad data. And then a related issue is poor data governance. This is the Black Knight from Monty Python's Holy Grail. And as you recall, he said none shall pass, and however, people got right past him. Arthur was able to get right past him. So if you don't have good standards in place for your data, if you don't have data governance in your organization, watching things like your data creation and making sure that there's a reasonable incentive or a good mechanism in place to keep the data from getting messed up, then it's going to continue. And then you have what I call the hot data mess. And this is the way most larger organizations work, and even smaller organizations. You have different silos of data because you have different functions. You have different processes. So you have your sales customer relationship where the sales guys just need the phone number. You have your point of sale, you have accounting, you have several different systems where an entity can be in there more than one time. And if you put that through an ETL, you can wind up with just a big pile of data. All right. So one example that I like to give is my buddy Quint. Here's Quint over here. And he is a person in my organization. And at first, he was in the CRM system. Quint, great guy. The sales guy just needs his phone number. So we've got his phone number, and you can see they made a typo. They've got a dot and a thing. And he's in Smyrna, Georgia. So then, sales guy does a great job and gets Quint to buy something. And now it goes into the POS system, which is a different database, different data creation. We get better data. So we know that his name is actually Robert L. Taylor V, and that's where the nickname Quint came from. We've got his street address now, and but we don't have the phone number. Okay. And look at the difference. The first one, he was in Smyrna, and the second one, he's in Atlanta. This happens a lot in Atlanta. I don't know if it does in other areas of the country, but Smyrna is a little suburb of Atlanta, but a lot of times it'll come up as Atlanta for prestige regions or something like that. So now we're having already data issues, even though the zip code and the address is the same. And then he goes into the financial system. Again, we have differences in the data. And think of all of these systems. They're probably all going to have their own surrogate keys. I mean, of course they are. They're totally independent of each other. So if I am trying to put all these into a data warehouse, I don't have a business key that defines this one person. So all I have to go on is my string data. And if I look at that and put it into an ETL, unless I have some data cleansing, I'm going to wind up with this, what's at the bottom of the screen. Okay? These are 3 different records as far as the ETL is concerned. Okay? So we've got duplicate records, we've got inaccurate, incomplete, dirty data. So we've got the phone number messed up. And what we want, what enterprise information management, what the user group that we're here to, devoting our time to learning about master data and data quality, what we want is actually to have the golden record. And if you see, what this has done is it's taken all of the elements and made a decision on which is the best and cleaned up the phone number, and now we have a golden record. All right. So data quality services is part of getting there, and it is new with SQL Server 2012. It is a knowledge-driven solution. I saw that phrase was very, very much part of the definition, and I wondered what it meant. And to me, it means that instead of data, which is hard and fast and has no human interaction, this is knowledge, which goes around in the head of a person, okay? So there are many people in every organization that are information workers that know the data and try and communicate how the data rules work to ETL developers, but there are always exceptions, and it's very, very challenging to actually get all of that programmed. So what you want to do is just capture it. Once you get the person to tell you what the knowledge is and the specific details of how the data works, you want to capture that knowledge, not just the data, but the knowledge about the data. So that's what that means. And that brings me to my next point, and this is a new picture of what I see this as. Okay, introducing the data steward. Previously, when I had done this presentation, I represented the data steward as a wizard, saying none shall pass. But I was trying to find maybe an even better representation, and I went with border collies because I like border collies. But the border collie, the data steward, is, herding the cats, herding the sheep, knows the data and how it's supposed to work, and is really good with it. Knows the data's habits, knows the really weird little idiosyncrasies that come, and is in the day in and day out operations from the business. So all of enterprise information management is emphasizing a collaboration between the business and IT, and not having everything rely on IT and a requirement software development lifecycle, putting more power into the hands of the business. So in our situation, which we're going to do some demos, the data steward would be creating and updating the knowledge bases. But those knowledge bases could then be consumed by other data stewards and IT, like the ETL developers. And that's the great thing, is that if you design your data, your knowledge base properly, you can make changes to it as the data steward, and the ETL developer, for instance, would not have to go in and change their code. As long as your attributes remain the same, your domains remain the same, and you're just changing nothing but the knowledge around them, then the packages, the SSIS, the ETLs, they can actually remain untouched, and you can still have improvements to your data quality. Okay, so knowledge bases, they perform two types of activities. I actually got confused and started saying previously that there were two types of knowledge bases, that there were cleansing knowledge bases and matching knowledge bases. That's not really true. Knowledge base is a knowledge base, but they perform two distinct types of activities. We're only going to talk about cleansing today, and matching I will do some other day. I'm working on a matching presentation. But cleansing is going to replace your data with cleaner data according to your knowledge. And then when you run things through matching rules, what you're hoping to get is the identification of duplicate rows. So Quint is a perfect example of something that would be a good candidate for a matching activity, where you could say, hey, in all likelihood, this is the same exact person. So I only want to load it once, and then I also want to have the best data quality about that I can. And this is all part of introducing enterprise information management and Microsoft's credible, consistent data. Data quality services is a part of it. Another part of it is master data services. Master data services has been around since 2008 R2. And master data services is a specialized database repository. It's part of SQL Server, but it also has specialized tools for handling what is your master data, and that is typically data that we think of as reference data or data that would go into a dimension in a warehouse. So master data services is a special set of tools and databases for your reference master data. And then we also have SSIS, which is going to be, that makes sense because it's going to be moving data around between all of these parts. Okay, so here's a little diagram. The data steward can be working with SSIS, with DQS, creating a knowledge base. And for the cleansing rules, the knowledge base would be leveraged by someone in IT making an SSIS package. So this is how the parts of the Microsoft stack work together. That data steward can also be creating the matching rules. And the matching rules can be used inside of MDS to make sure that duplicate data isn't getting into your master data. And that's frightfully important because master data should be your golden record. So having a matching rule mechanism in place for MDS is very good. SSIS is used quite frequently with MDS. You can use MDS subscription views to load your warehouses. You can also use SSIS to load your MDS. So with 2012 MDS, MDS now has better staging tables to load into the models, and you can use SSIS to load there. So they all interact, and they're designed to. You can use SSIS and a cleansing knowledge base rule to just cleanse data. It doesn't have to be always with MDS or even a data warehouse. You can just cleanse data if you want to. So this is another summary of that you can cleanse with SSIS and you can match with MDS. MDS now has an add-in for Excel so that you can use the matching rules and perform matching. And here's where it's a little tricky, and I just wanted to help you remember this, that you can't use matching in SSIS and you can't use cleansing in MDS. So you can't use a cleansing knowledge base rule in MDS, and you can't do a matching rule in SSIS to identify. The reason for that in SSIS is that there's fuzzy grouping, so I was playing around with that, and I have a demo that I can show you when we get there. I just wanted to point out, I know you guys had a great presentation last month about the Melissa Data Reference Services, the Azure Data Market. DQS has a wonderful interface for interacting with services for address, for instance, like address cleansing. I can show you that. I just wanted to point out too, I find that usually it's on composite domains like addresses, and we'll go over what that means. Okay, so now time for me to stop talking quite so much and show you the coolness of DQS. And I just want to go over what my scenario is. So I own a restaurant. It's called Smitty's House of Potatoes. And I have a hotline where I take customer complaints. And I also allow folks to complain on the web. So they can get to me two different ways. They can call or they can do it on the web. And here's some of the reference data you're going to start seeing. I'm going to focus on the restaurants and not the categories. But let's say I have 4 restaurants in 3 cities. These are them. It's Eastside Summit Plaza, Franklin Hills Shopping, North Point Place, and Lake Erie Walk. I've got some dirty data, and my reports are winding up being unusable. Okay, and you can see why. If you look here at the bottom, where I have the names in my chart, poor service there. I have one poor service that's Eastside Plaza, and then I have a complaint that's other, that's Eastside Summit Plaza. I have cold food and poor service, Eastside Summit Plaza. These are all actually the same location. So really I have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 locations, 6 complaints all coming from the same location, but I can't tell. And if this were scaled out to hundreds of thousands of incidents, you can see how people would get frustrated and say, well, I'm just going to have to clean this up and I'm going to do it myself, and I don't like the warehouse, and you guys, you know, you all stink. So we don't want that. So let's go over to data quality services. I'm supposed to be doing a presentation. That's my reminder. Okay. So here is the data quality services client. Okay, I got here by going, to the programs in SQL Server 2012, Microsoft SQL Server 2012, data quality services, and I go to the client. And it brings this up. And the client interface has 3 main parts. We've got here on the left for the knowledge base management. Once you've created your knowledge base and you're the information worker, you don't have access maybe to SSIS, you can manually cleanse data and perform matching with projects, and you would access that from the middle. And then you have administration tools, basic logging, setting up your Azure data services, setting up your thresholds. But what I wanted to show you is just open up a typical knowledge base so that we can start taking a tour of it. Is everything okay? Can you guys still hear me?
We can see it over here, yes.
Okay, I didn't hear anything for so long. I was afraid maybe my microphone muted myself, which it has done a couple of times. All right, so I've opened up this knowledge base that is for the Smitty's House of Potatoes. And knowledge base is roughly an equivalent to a database for people who are from the SQL world and ready, thinking like that. Now, we kind of skip the concept of tables. You have knowledge bases, and then you have domains. And domains are more related to what a column or an attribute would be. So if I wanted to make a brand new domain, I would click on this button right here for creating a domain. I would type in the new domain name, and I have a few choices for my data type. And I have found, and I believe this will be true, that I think the most powerful use of data quality services is going to be for your string data types, because that's where your data tends to get messy. Anything else might be a calculation error, but your string is definitely where things can get messy. I won't go into all of these. We can find out what these mean, but I will say that using leading values is very important, and you want to do that. That's one of the most powerful features of DQS, and I'm going to show you what that does for you. You can format. You can say, hey, send a capital case or lowercase. You can do that with these. So I can do that. And then once you have a domain, you have these tabs, all right? So this right here is my properties. That's what we just set up. Reference data, this is where if I had a service with the Azure Data Market right now, I could hook myself up to it. Here's a tab that I find useful, and that is domain rules. So I can define rules for a domain and say you're either valid or invalid depending on these rules. So whether I'm cleaning it or not, I'm basically going to say, well, this one is a complete and utter reject. Okay? So one of them that I enjoy working with is the zip code. Okay, in my scenario, Lake Erie Walk is actually in Toronto, which is a Canadian city, and so whereas I used to have all American zip codes, now I actually need to start introducing postal codes. So let's look at the domain values that I have. Domain values represent possible values that when I set up the knowledge base, I said, hey, this is okay. Now, there is a Canadian postal code. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how if I take this out, I take out that rule that says, hey, it matches the pattern A1A, which the pattern matching for DQS is very specific, and I have a blog post on it, but basically any letter represents any letter, and any number represents any number. So this rule is actually catching my Canadian postal codes and saying, hey, you're okay. So let me get rid of that, and I'll show you what happens. Now I can click down here inside the client and apply the rules, and it's going to tell me what it's going to do. So now my invalid rules, my invalid values are going to increase. Okay? So if I go back and look at my domain values, this used to be a valid domain value, and now it's no longer a valid domain value. Okay? Let me go to address. And before I get into the real meat of the term-based, of the domain values, if I go to address, I wanted to show you term-based relations. Term-based relations allows you to cherry-pick strings and completely replace within a domain value. So if anywhere within a domain value that was coming through my cleansing, if I had AVE, it would replace it with Avenue. And that's within the domain value. If I had AVE, AVE, AVE as a domain value, it would replace it with Avenue, Avenue, Avenue. It would do it as many times as it occurred inside the domain value. So what I'm going to show you now is in my restaurant location, my domain values. Remember how I said that leading values were incredibly useful and important and one of the best features of DQS. And this is where they come into play. In my domain values, I can designate one value as the leading value. And what that does for me, so Eastside Summit Plaza is my winner, basically. And all of these values down here would be corrected to the leading value. Franklin Hills Shopping Center, I have some ways I know that they've been misspelled, and they're going to get corrected here. Now, what you would see when you put data through is you would see here that it would first catch the term-based relation and then do the correction, if that were applicable. So I'm going to finish here and publish that. And what I'm going to show you is, let's clean up some data. New DQS. So I'm going to do a manual data quality project, like I said earlier, if I were the information worker. And I wanted to use the knowledge base that I just showed us, and I'm going to select my activity. I don't have any matching rules set up, so it's not an option. I'm going to select cleansing. Let me show you what, while this is in process, while it's thinking about it, let me show you the spreadsheet that I'm going to use to clean up the data. So here's my spreadsheet, and this spreadsheet generates, again, a chart that's practically unusable. And I'm going to show us how we can take the data in here, run it through the cleansing activity, and we're going to get output that is clean data. And I'm going to show you later with SSIS how you can actually circle all the way back around and actually update right to your original source. That's one thing that I think confuses people about DQS is, okay, it's cleansing my data. Is it cleansing my data or not? It doesn't really cleanse your data back at the source, but what it does is it gives you the dirty data with the cleansed output, and then you take that output and do what you want. So let me see here. Sorry, I have lost the plot. Okay, this is where my spreadsheet is. Okay. All right. Open the Excel spreadsheet. I don't know if you guys saw that, but here's one little tricky thing with DQS. I'll help you out. Right now, it needs to be in the older format of Excel. So when you're working with it, if you have a newer data, a newer version of Excel, you have to save as the XLS. Okay. So I'm going to grab the right sheet. Right now, connections are limited to Excel and SQL Server 2012 tables. That I'm sure is going to change, but that's the limitation right now. So we're going to map the location, which is the source in the spreadsheet, to the location in the domain. I'm going to do next. And here I can start the cleansing. And I'm going to get some profiling information. Okay, so I get some profiling information. Completeness tells me were any of my values either an empty string or null. So in this example, I have 100% populated values for that particular location or column. Then it gives me information about what it thinks it's going to do. So 88% of them were either okay or it corrected them. 12% are suggested or new. And suggested is somewhere between I knew without a doubt that I could fix it, and I have no idea. So that's where suggested lies. We have one suggested record. We have some corrected records. So let's just go take a look. And here's where the really fun part comes. I'm the information worker, and in my manage and view results, I get suggested values. And this is really cool. It says, hey, I'm not sure, but I think that this is probably North Point Place. And my confidence level on that is 74%. So I can say, hey, good job. And then once I click approve, that's going to go, this value is going to go into the corrected bucket. Okay? If I go to the corrected, we're going to see these are the values that came in, and this is what DQS Knowledge Base was able to do with it. All right? And remember I said that the term-based relation would show up, so I can actually have the reason for why things are happening. Okay, corrected to north point place and standardized to leading value. And if I don't like any of these, if my knowledge base isn't right, I can reject something. I can click reject and it'll go into another bucket. Okay, these 4 were okay. And these 5 are brand new. And new means I just can't make anything of this. To me, it looks like a brand new value. I could say, hey, this actually, I know because I'm the information worker, I know that that's what that should be, and I can approve it. And the beauty of this is that once I'm done with this project, I can go back into my original knowledge base and capture. I have to import them. I have to do an extra step, but I can go back in and capture the work that I did while I was cleansing the data. So I can capture that new rule. Okay. So I'm going to leave these as they are, and I'm going to show you what the final step would be. Final step would be to, as the information worker working in the client, would be to export the data so that I can work with it somewhere else, or maybe it's actually my final result. I'm going to use SQL Server, and I'm just going to say, let's see. And I can choose to only do the data. I can have only the data, or I can actually grab all of this metadata about it, like the reason and the accuracy, or I'm sorry, the confidence. So Smitty 0228. And let me go.
Julie, there was a question about the confidence. Why 12% suggested, not 1%?
What do you mean? Why 12%, not 1%?
Brian Berry, would you be willing to expand on your question?
I'm not.
Hi. Can you hear me, Julie?
I can hear you, Brian.
Oh, great. So I think that I saw a bar there that was 88% green and 12% yellow. And then, but then on the left-hand side, it said that there was only one suggestion. So I think suggested item, which was 1%. So I'm wondering that clearly that 12% is accounting for something that the left-hand side isn't. Can you speak to that at all, or?
Yeah. So the suggested was a discrete value. It was like one row, and that yellow portion, that was suggested or new. It lumped them together.
Oh, I see. So that was including the new ones that it had created.
Yeah. So I think there were, it's 106 records, so I think there were around 10 brand new records and then one suggested, and that's what it wound up being as a percentage.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, great. So we know what we can do inside the client. You can also do a data discovery, which I'm not going to do, but you can just run your data through the knowledge base over here by doing data knowledge discovery. So rather than actually going through the whole process where you would say, okay, and here's my cleansed data, you could just run your data through, so you're cleansing your, not cleansing, you're getting your knowledge base richer. And the more that you use it and the more rules that you put in, the better job it's going to do with your cleansing. Now, I know I exported that. Let me refresh. I'm trying to find the table that I exported everything to. Huh. Hang on. I'll go back and I'll just export it again. SQL Server DQS. All right. Export. Okay, so here we go, and I just grabbed everything, and I just wanted to show you that I wanted to emphasize again that DQS doesn't write back to your original data source. Okay, so this is what it came in as. It came in as Eastside Plaza, and this is what it comes out with. It's additional information. Somebody somewhere has to manipulate the data to get it right back all the way to the source. I just want to emphasize that. So it's not a update tool. It just says, here's what came in, and here's what I think it should be, and now they're buddies, like they're side by side. All right, so I wanted to show you some fun stuff in SSIS too. With 2012, the DQS, there is a component now called the DQS cleansing component. Right here, DQS cleansing. And I don't know if, I hope everyone's seen 2012 SSIS by now. It's got round corners, which is really nice, and it's purpley. But when you have a component, the DQS cleansing component, basically you need a new type of connection manager, and then you can, from here, select a knowledge base. And once you've done that, then you map your incoming data to your domain. So this is set up just like you would expect. I've got to know my input, and I have to know the domain that I'm mapping it to. And remember when I said that there were only two types of connection managers in DQS? Well, here's the workaround. With DQS 2012 and the component, anything that you can connect to SSIS with, you can connect to the DQS cleansing component by using SSIS. So I've got a flat file source here because I wanted to show you that, and it basically has the same type of stuff. It's the same data, it's just in a text file instead. And I've mapped it to the cleansing, and I wanted to show, and this is the demo that I used to use a lot, and this is where I would stop, but I'm going to give you guys more because I realize that people want to see more. They want to see the data get all the way back to the table cleansed. But what's great about this is, since I have all this metadata coming out about my the results of my cleansing, I'm getting the confidence level. I'm getting the reason. If you know SSIS, then you know what you can do with that is you can start putting that into a conditional split and sending the data on different paths. So this is really useful. So I can say, here's a path for, if that location confidence is too low, then I don't really want it. I'm going to set my threshold at a certain level. So here I've set it to say, you know, if you've made a guess, and that's what the greater than nothing means, if you've made a guess and your location confidence is less than 76%, then I don't want to load you. And then the other thing is, with that postal code example, remember we defined rules where you can actually define data as valid or invalid. If a row is invalid, then again I can say I don't want that piece of data. And so I have one data path, two data path, and my third one is called OK to load. So here, let me put my data viewers back in so we can see what this stuff is looking like as it's coming through. And we're going to get to see what this is going to do for us. So I just have derived columns so that we could see what the actual component did, but we're gonna do more with it in just a second. So here it comes. Going through the cleansing. The one thing that people are a little sad about with DQS is that it tends to go a little slow, but there are things that you can do to alleviate that, and I have a slide on that I can tell you about. Okay, so here's my OK to load. So these guys are all great, you know, as far as their location confidence is either good enough or they were OK to start with. This is an invalid row, and this is because it's got a bad zip code. Let me see here. It's over here. See, the zip code, that doesn't even make sense. That's a word. And then we have location confidence not good enough. So this one was 74%. And so this one is going to go down a bad path too. And what you would really do in reality is if you have something like that in a business scenario, what you would do is probably write it off into a text file or a table or something so that an information worker can address that issue too and say, hey, what's the problem? Is my knowledge base just not good enough? Do I need to call up whoever's sending me this data and get it cleansed? I mean, all of these tools are, you know, the end goal is to get everybody's data in good shape. And this is all to help you with that. So let's do my next SSIS package that I wrote. So I'm going to refresh because I don't know where I left this. And going back to Management Studio so you guys can see, this is the table that I'm going to be dealing with. It's called Smitty's Restaurant to Clean. And I have the same kind of problem with my data. I have, inconsistent cases and just all kinds of problems. And what I want to do is show you guys how I'm going to use the knowledge base to actually write all the way back using SSIS, to just write all the way back and clean this data up, how I would do that. Okay, so here's the location. So one thing that I have that I'm using for this is a staging table. Okay, because if I'm trying to write back to my original source, this is just, kind of like the logic that I'm using. If I'm trying to write back to my original source, I can't do that in line with everything that's going to be going on with the DQS and everything. So I'm gonna write off the location ID, and I'm going to grab what the cleansed result is, and then the very last thing I would do would be to do an execute SQL task and write it back to the original database. So I have to kind of separate the processes. I can't do it all in line. All right, so I'm refreshed. This right here is just an execute SQL task that's going to truncate the staging table. And here is my population of the staging table. This is where the DQS component is. And here is just that update statement. So this is my final step where I'm going to update it based on whatever I load into the staging table. So here's the real fun. I have my dirty locations. This is from that table. And this is all of them. There's no filter on this at all. I'm going to run it through the cleansing. Okay, so location is mapped to restaurant location. And I'm going to do my conditional split. I'm going to completely write off anything that's invalid. If it's invalid, it goes over there. I still have my location confidence too low, only I'm going to do something a little bit different with it this time. I think I opened the wrong package. Hold on just a second. I have 3 copies of it. All right. Oh, okay, my bars just got, okay, that's all that happened. This was okay to start with. Excuse me, everyone. So what I've got is I've got the location too low and okay to load going into a union all, because I thought, okay, you tell me that the way to do this now is through fuzzy grouping. I'm going to use it. So I'm going to go into fuzzy grouping, and now I've got the location output is what I am trying to figure out. This is the thing I'm going to try and group on. And it's using the fuzzy grouping, the old component from SSIS. It's going to say, hey, I'm going to use the fuzzy grouping logic, and I'm going to put these guys together. So I'm running it through basically 2 cleansing matching processes. And I'm going to pass through everything else. Okay, so passing through in the fuzzy grouping just means it's going to come through untouched. But now I'm going to have the DQS cleansed output, and I'm going to have the fuzzy grouping output. And what I want to land, since it's a union all, what comes through DQS is going to also be what comes out of the fuzzy grouping. It's going to copy the data over. So I'm going to map it all I'm still going to have my location ID and my location cleanse, because this column, location output clean, contains both the DQS cleansed outputs if it found it, and then it put those rejects together with the ones the DQS found and matches those up too. So it's been through like a double cleansing process. And it does a little better that way. So we're going to run this. And I'm going to show you what it'll do. This is going to take the longest. All right, I still have viewers on here. So in my viewer, you can see here's what came, the location output is what came out of DQS. The DQS said, hey, this is new. So this is basically what it went in as. But then the fuzzy grouping was able to find more matches. So because there was the old stuff in that DQS did find, it was able to say, oh, but you guys go together. And so I was able to kind of do a double cleansing process. So I was able to pick up more valid, or not valid, but good matches from my locations. I'm going to close that. And then the last thing it does is update the table. And so now, get rid of this. And we can compare these two. This is what it was before. My copy to keep is my original, and this is now Smitty's Restaurants to Clean is cleansed. So this is the dirty stuff. Eastside Plaza, row number 4, has been grabbed up to Eastside Summit Plaza. And I've actually written all the way back to my original data source. So now I'm going to go back to my slide deck. I've got just a few more things to share with you guys. All right, I'll get it. Good to know things. I want to just kind of go over basic architecture. We were looking at the DQS staging table. That's kind of like a, hey, here's this great place to put your data. It doesn't do anything functionally, but it is the, it's there for your use. It's like a good place to put stuff if you're exporting, importing, etc. The DQS main is where your knowledge base data is stored. It's where the settings are. DQS projects is data and stored procedures that the client needs and SSIS needs to run projects. There's 3 roles for DQS. There's an administrator who has all rights, the editor who can, create and edit knowledge bases, and the operator who can only operate them and clean data through the client. But remember that when they're done with the project, that someone else could come in and use the stuff that they did and import it back into the knowledge base. So that's cool. When you install it, it's a standard installation. There's now some checkboxes for data quality. There's the data quality client and the services, and that's the standard part. There's a new thing where after that you have to go into Start Programs and run the DQS installer.exe. You can also just get to it from the command prompt wherever your DQS folder is, where your program files have been stored. You run it, and what that does is actually that's what creates your catalogs for you. And there are actually other tools that go with the DQS installer.exe. Oh, here it is. I have a screenshot of it. That's good. So right there. Connection types we've talked about. There's just 2 inside the client. The workarounds are connection managers and SSIS and link servers. And I'm glad I'm not in the room with you because people always want to throw stuff at me when I say link server. But this isn't an application. This is just data cleansing. This slide deck will be available. I just wanted to put some reference in there. Performance considerations, definitely check out the white paper. It has best practices. Basically what they're saying is, keep your batches small, and so that you can get good knowledge and that you don't overwhelm DQS at this time. There's, and here are 2 more things I found and put on the slide deck just today. This connect item, you get the slide deck, go to this connect item. I'm not guaranteeing this because this is just a connect item advice that someone gave, but there's a setting inside the knowledge base, the DQS _main database, I'm sorry, not knowledge base, for SSIS. And what this gentleman found was that the batch size for DQS was like 1,000. When, if you work with SSIS, you know that the batch size, the buffer size is about 10,000 rows. So you can manually, with an update statement, change it to be the right buffer size, so that at least SSIS isn't, deliberately and going purposefully even slower than it, needs to. And then another thing that you can do is you can split out your data flows using this this item here called the SSIS Balanced Data Distributor. DQS Component right now, it does not run in parallel. So this Balanced Data Distributor will enable you to force it to run in parallel. So these two things you can get better performance out of DQS, especially in SSIS. Again, I'm just going through this. This is the last deck I had when it was just cumulative update 1. I know that with Service Pack 1, I think matching is a lot better. I actually don't know the metrics for Service Pack 1. I'm imagining that it's probably even more improved. But you can see that SSIS is the sad one. It goes a little slow, but I'm hoping that with these performance tweaks that are in the previous slide that we can get better performance out of it. And I just wanted to share with you the recommended hardware specs, for the size of your data. This is, again, will just be available on the slide deck. I won't read it to you. And then here are just some references. There's a lot of good stuff out there. Chris Price has a series of blog works I was just reading last night. I don't have it on the slide, but Melissa Totes has some good blogs on this. Lots of stuff on Channel 9 from TechEd. Good sessions on DQS are available there.
And actually, Chris Price is going to be presenting in a couple of months.
Awesome.
As part of the virtual chapter. So, yeah, great guy, definitely worth reading.
Yeah. So here's more references to Chris and the Channel 9. And then again, I just want to plug the data again. That's our training. It's on Pi Day. I'm sure we're going to have Pi. I heard we're going to have M&Ms. So the Cloverleaf School is making custom M&Ms. So that'll be fun. So you're going to have a lot of fun stuff to eat, if nothing else. So check it out. And thank you very, very much. And are there any other questions?
If you could ask your questions in the instant message window, be sure to get to them.
And we're right at 1 o'clock. I'm okay if, unless someone comes and kicks me out of this little room I'm in.
Okay, looks like no questions.
Okay.
Julie, thank you very much. It was a great presentation to the attendees. Sorry for any technical issues that we've had. We're just recently relaunching the virtual chapter, but we do appreciate your patience as we work through them. The presentation and the slide deck will be available on SQLpass.org, or rather masterdata.sqlpass.org, and I will email out the attendee list, the links to those presentations. Thank you again, and look forward to seeing you guys next month.
Thanks, everyone.